My name is Margaret Hale, and I never imagined my life would begin again at 65, not out of choice, but because I was pushed out of the very home I helped build. White Pine Valley, Montana, was where Samuel and I spent 38 winters together. Our house wasn't large or fancy, but every wooden beam, every scuffed floorboard, had our laughter and struggles stitched into it. Now all that remained of him was his photograph above the fireplace, and his silent body resting in a coffin at the center of our living room. The funeral had barely ended. Muffled condolences still floated in the air. The scent of lily lingered, and people whispered prayers as they left. I was standing near the window when Christopher, my only son, walked toward me with eyes cold enough to freeze the river outside. "You need to leave," he said quietly at first. I thought I misheard him. "What do you mean, dear?" His jaw clenched. Louder this time, firmer, sharper. "This isn't your home anymore, Mom. You need to pack your things and go." My breath caught. For a moment, all I heard was the ticking of the old wall clock. Behind him stood Olivia, his wife, arms crossed, lips curled into a satisfied smirk. She'd never hidden the fact that she believed the house should belong to them. "Christopher," I whispered. "Your father isn't even—" He didn't let me finish. His hand lashed out, striking my cheek, not hard enough to knock me down, but hard enough to break something inside me that would never heal quite right. A crack. Not just on my skin, but in my soul. Gasps rippled through the few relatives still lingering, but no one stepped forward. No one spoke for me. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I steadied myself, looked into my son's eyes, the same eyes that once searched for me in grocery store aisles, the same hands that clung to my fingers crossing icy streets, and I saw nothing familiar, not a trace of my boy. Without a word, I walked to the hallway. My suitcase sat where I had dropped it 2 nights ago when I came home from the hospital with Samuel's last belongings. I didn't pack the family photos. I didn't take the quilt my mother stitched. I didn't even take my wedding ring from the knit stand, but I did take something they didn't expect: the mortgage documents. The ones Samuel insisted I sign with him all those years ago. My name, my rights, my proof. The house behind me stayed silent as the door clicked shut. Snow drifted softly, brushing my black coat, but the cold felt kinder than my own son's touch. I walked past the rosebush Samuel planted on our 25th anniversary, past the creaking porch swing where we shared morning coffee, and down the long driveway. At the end of the street, I sat on a bench near the old gas station, waiting for a taxi. My cheeks stung, but my heart was strangely still, because I knew something they didn't. The house they claimed as theirs still had my name on it. They thought I walked away defeated. But what they didn't know was this: I wasn't done, and the house wasn't theirs. Not yet. The taxi driver didn't ask questions when he saw me standing in the snow, clutching a half-packed suitcase and staring at nothing. He only said, "Motel or home, ma'am?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Motel," I whispered. That night, I lay on a stiff bed in a dimly lit room at the Pinecrest Motel off Highway 18. The heater rattled like an old man coughing, and the smell of bleach clung to the blankets. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, but because the hurt was too big for tears. I kept hearing Samuel's voice in my memory. "If I go first, don't tell Christopher about the papers unless he hurts you," he had said one quiet evening while wind howled outside our window. I had laughed back then and told him our son would never do such a thing. I was wrong. By morning, my cheek had turned a dull purple. I stood in front of the cracked bathroom mirror and gently touched the bruise, not out of pain but disbelief. That's when I made the call. Not to Christopher ... not to Olivia ... but to the bank. "Good morning," the woman on the line said politely. "How may I help you?" "My name is Margaret Hale. I'd like to suspend the automatic mortgage payments on the property at 214 Willow Bend, White Pine Valley." A pause, then typing. "You're listed as co-borrower and co-owner. You're permitted to place that request." "Are you sure, ma'am?" ... double quotes, yes, I said. My voice didn't shake. "I'm sure. It took less than 10 minutes to undo decades of assumptions. By noon, the payments were frozen. The bank would send a notice within the month. And the house that Christopher and Olivia claimed was theirs would suddenly have a shadow over it default. I walked out of the bank with a quiet kind of fire inside me. Not revenge, not cruelty. Just justice. Back at the motel, I unlocked a small brown box I kept in my suitcase. Inside were 3 things Samuel left me before he died. A sealed letter in his handwriting. Copies of the mortgage documents. A supplemental will with my name written across the top. I opened the letter. His words were soft but sharp. If you're reading this, Maggie, then something I prayed wouldn't happen has happened. But remember this, you are not powerless. You built that home as much as I did. If our son forgets that, remind him not with anger, but with truth. I closed my eyes and held the letter against my chest. Outside, snow kept falling over the valley, covering everything in white. They thought I left silently, defeated. But I was only stepping back. So I could return with everything they had forgotten. I held my name, my rights, my proof. The house wasn't theirs anymore, and soon they were going to find out in a way they never expected. 3 days passed in the quiet room of the Pinecrest Motel. In the mornings, I watched snowflakes gather on the windowsill. At night, I listened to the radiator groan like it was tired of surviving too. I didn't call Christopher. I didn't explain anything. I waited. On the 4th day, I took the bus to the courthouse in town. My coat was worn. My shoes left wet prints on the marble floor, but my steps were steady. I met with Miss Evelyn Grant, the lawyer Samuel trusted. A calm woman with silver-streaked hair and glasses, perched low on her nose. When I handed her the envelope with the supplemental will and Samuel's letter, she read everything in silence. When she finally looked up, she said softly, "Mrs. Hale, are you ready to use this?" I hesitated only for a second. Then I nodded. Yes. She took a deep breath. Then it begins now. That afternoon, she filed legal motions to enforce what Samuel had planned years ago. If Christopher ever abused, insulted, or forced me out of the home, he would lose all rights to the estate. Everything, house, savings, land, would go directly to me. 2 weeks later, it happened. A formal envelope from the bank was delivered to the house at Willow Bend. I wasn't there to see it, but a neighbor later described how Christopher opened it by the mailbox, his face turning pale. Notice of mortgage default. Payments had stopped. The account holder had revoked authorization. The house he claimed was his now stood on ground he never legally owned. The next notice came from the court. Then from the attorney. Then from me. By the end of the month, the reality hit them like a winter storm. I wasn't the one being pushed out anymore. They were. My phone rang that evening. Christopher's name flashed across the screen. For the first time in weeks, I answered. "Mom, what did you do?" he asked. Voice small, frightened. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I stopped paying for a house I was told wasn't mine. Double quotes. There was silence, then a shaky breath. "We didn't mean it. Please." "We're going to lose everything. You already did," I said gently. "The day you forgot who built that home." He sniffed loudly. "Can we fix it? Can you just sign it back?" I closed my eyes. "You told me it wasn't my home. So I made sure it truly wouldn't be yours. Double quotes. I ended the call, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. That night, I placed Samuel's letter back in its box. His words echoed in my heart. "Silence isn't weakness, Maggie. It's preparation." He was right. I wasn't loud. I wasn't violent. I was simply ready. The world thought I disappeared. But soon I would stand in front of them again, this time not as a grieving mother, but as the rightful owner of the truth. The meeting was held at my sister-in-law's house, neutral ground they called it. Chairs lined the long wooden table. Coffee cups sat untouched, and the room was filled with the uneasy silence of a family waiting for a storm. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. Christopher sat at the table, shoulders tense, his eyes fixed on the door. Olivia sat beside him, hands folded tightly, her usual confidence replaced with quiet panic. Relatives who once looked past me were now watching every move I made. I didn't greet anyone. I simply walked in, placed my tote bag on the table and began setting down what I brought one by one. The original will. The supplemental will. A notarized copy of the mortgage agreement. A small USB drive containing the audio recording. My lawyer, Miss Grant, stood beside me. Her calm presence filled the room with something stronger than anger's certainty. "Thank you for coming," she began. "This meeting is to inform the Hall family of the legal changes pertaining to the estate of the late Samuel Hall." Christopher opened his mouth, anger rising. "Why are we—" "Let her finish," I said softly. His eyes widened. He went silent. Ms. Grant continued. "Under the supplemental will signed in 2020, a clause exists, Clause 14B. It states that if Christopher Hall verbally, physically or emotionally abuses or evicts Margaret Hale from her home, he forfeits all inheritance rights. The estate then transfers entirely to Mrs. Hale." Whispers. Gasps. Olivia's face drained of color. Christopher slammed his palm on the table. "That's not what happened!" Without a word, Miss Grant pressed play on the USB speaker, and there it was, his voice. Unmistakable. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out!" Then the sound of a slap. Silence, my broken breath. Even the clock seemed to hold its tick. Christopher sank into his chair, as if the gravity of his own words pulled him down. Olivia looked away, jaw tight. Miss Grant spoke again, calm, firm. "By law, Christopher Hale no longer has any claim to the house or to Samuel Hale's remaining assets." All eyes turned to me. Christopher whispered, voice trembling. "Mom, please, we were grieving. I didn't mean it." I looked at my son, the child I once carried in my arms, the boy who used to bring me wildflowers from the field behind our house. "I know you were grieving," I said quietly. "But pain does not excuse cruelty. And love does not mean silence." His eyes filled with tears. "Am I losing everything?" I stood, gathering the documents calmly back into my bag. "No, Christopher," I said, pausing at the door. "You already lost it. The moment you broke your mother instead of her silence. And then I walked out. This time, no one dared stop me. But what they didn't know was, I had one last decision to make. And it wouldn't just change my life. It would end theirs as they knew it. It rained the day they came to my door. 3 soft knocks, hesitant, nothing like the confident footsteps that once claimed my house as their own. When I opened it, there stood Christopher, soaked to the bone, eyes red and swollen. Olivia stood behind him, shoulders trembling, but her gaze lowered, no arrogance left, only regret. "Mom?" Christopher whispered, voice cracking. "Please, we don't have anywhere else to go. The bank. The court. They're taking the house. Double quotes. I said nothing. I just listened. He sank to his knees on the hallway floor of my small apartment. I was wrong. We were wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me. But if you could just help us save the house. His words hung in the air, heavy as winter clouds. I stepped past him and reached into my bag. I pulled out a folded document in a clear sleeve and placed it in his trembling hands. He blinked. "What is this?" "The deed transfer," I said quietly. "As of yesterday, the house is no longer mine." Silence. Olivia stepped forward, voice shaking. You sold it?" "To who?" "To the White Pine Elder Support Foundation," I answered. "They're turning it into a home for displaced senior women. Women like me who are thrown out of the lives they helped build." Christopher stared at the paper as if it burned. "You sold our home." "No," I said gently. "I sold my home. The one your father and I built. The one I worked 2 jobs to save. The one I was told didn't belong to me anymore." He cried then, not the angry, breaking cry of pride, but the soft, choking sound of a boy who finally understood. Olivia's voice trembled. "We didn't know. We were just You didn't want to know, I replied. You wanted the walls, the rooms, the keys, but not the woman who kept them together. I took a deep breath, not out of anger but release. I don't hate you. I don't want revenge. But I won't go back to that house, not to live with people who only value me when they're losing something. Christopher wiped his face with his sleeve. So, what now? I already chose, I said. With the money from the sale, I bought a small cabin near a quiet lake in northern Montana, surrounded by pine trees and silence that didn't hurt. No grand staircase, no polished floors. Just creaking wood, a warm fireplace, and a sky full of stars. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of birds and cold air brushing against the window panes. I make a cup of coffee, wrap myself in Samuel's old flannel coat, and sit on the porch to watch the mist rise off the lake. For the first time in years, I'm not scared of silence. I own it. I didn't keep the house ... I kept my peace. And sometimes, that's the greater inheritance. If you've ever been pushed out of the life you helped build, remember, starting over isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's the bravest way to reclaim your name. Just let me know if you're still here listening to my story. Then maybe you understand what silence and strength really mean. So, my dear, like this story, share it with others, and subscribe, because I have many more truths to tell.